I want to welcome on into the program State Rep Scott Cepicky. Easy for me to say. He is joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Scott, appreciate it, and quite the controversy last night as the state legislature completely replacing the Board of Trustees at Tennessee State University, one of our HBCUs, or historically black colleges and universities. This is, I think, emblematic of how this is being covered in local media. This is Channel 5.
Despite repeated pleas.
Feels like harsh punishment for the university.
From Democrats.
Vacating the entire leadership is irresponsible.
And TSU alumni.
We know some things are not right, and we have been working very hard.
A Senate committee voted to advance a measure that would remove the HBCU's current Board of Trustees and start over.
Well, ultimately, that is what happened, and Governor Lee has already assigned the replacements. And so I think this is an interesting topic. This college, they were riddled with problems, and that's what led to such an extreme measure.
Dan, you're absolutely right. We've been working on this for, I think, over 2 years right now through the Government Operations Committee and the Comptroller's Office. This whole started with a scathing report and audit by the Comptroller of the malfeasance of the board and not giving direction or oversight to the administration of TSU. And Government Operations, Senator Roberts and Representative Chairman Reagan gave TSU's board ample opportunity to take corrective action and get this ship going in the right way. And they just basically didn't do it. And so we have an obligation to make sure the integrity of TSU and all of our universities are run in a responsible way. And I applaud the members of the House and the General Assembly. It was a tough thing to do, but we had to send a message that you are going to do what's right for our students and our state taxpayer-funded universities, and do it in a right and ethical way. And therefore now, Governor Lee has already voted to replace those 8 members. And if you look at the people that he's replaced them with, they are very, very high quality individuals. And we look to get this whole issue behind us very quickly.
Apparently, so there was the comptroller that did the audit. Is that the same audit that was, and I'm air quoting here, the outside independent audit, or was that a second one? Is that the same audit?
Second one. The comptroller basically contracts with independent people to do audits because he doesn't have the staff to do them across the state.
Got it.
And then when that independent one came back with the problems, then the comptroller jumped in with his staff and did a more deep dive into what was going on, and then that's when that scathing report came back. State
Rep Scott Cepicky is joining us, and apparently there were 56 observations and 60 recommendations for the school from that forensic audit. And so part of the problem, apparently, is that they tried to do this audit as thoroughly as possible, and this may be indicative of the problems at TSU, but they didn't have all of the materials that the audit was requesting. And that kind of leads you to believe that they were very disorganized. The communication wasn't great.
Yeah, you're 100% right there, Dan. It was just a total breakdown of the whole system at TSU. And, the original compromise was to remove 3 of the 8, but then that meant there were 5 people who would still be there that were part of the problem. And I applaud the Senate. They came up with a solution. It was a drastic solution, but it needed to be done. And we've already done it. The governor's already signed the bill and already reappointed a new board. So those members will be sworn in very quickly, and they will take their seats and start to administer direction to the administration at TSU.
The headline in the Tennessean, because they're trying to make this case that this is some sort of political, some people are saying it's political retribution. We'll get into that in a second. But the Democrats are trying to make it racial. But this is the headline. Republican lawmakers vacate full Tennessee State University board over Democratic objections. And part of the objection here, they say, is that there was a deal, and you just mentioned this, in committee to keep some of these board members. But when it got to the full House, everyone was removed. But, the Democrats, they're trying to make it racial. And clearly this headline from the Tennessean is trying to make this political as well, and sort of like a Republican thing. Let me ask you a question.
Well, Go ahead.
Let me ask a question and then you can go. But, this is a historically black college, historically black college. And so I guess my statement would be, if this college was so riddled with operational dysfunction, wouldn't it be racist not to do something to try to help the college?
Well, Dan, I don't believe it's racist in any faction.
Right.
What I believe, Dan, is we have a responsibility to the taxpayers to make sure that our land grant institutions, whether they're UT Martin, TSU, Tennessee Tech, it doesn't matter. We have an obligation to run those in the most ethical way and most responsible way we can, to not only provide the educational opportunities for the kids, but provide the return on investment of the taxpayers. And unfortunately, TSU was being directed in a way that was not appropriate. And the General Assembly, we did our job. We stepped in and said, this is not going to continue. Take corrective action. They did not take corrective action. And so we took corrective action, and we did what we are supposed to do, oversight.
Now, they're saying that they have been underfunded for 30 years to the tune of $2.1 billion. Not to get too technical here, but what they're saying is they're known as a land grant college, which means that they have an ag department or program. A University of Tennessee does too. So both are supposed to be funded the same, but reporting says they're not. So are they underfunded? And if so, what's next?
Well, I don't know if they're underfunded on purpose, Dan. I think what's happened is there's been some discrepancies in the way they've done their business, and so there's been some reluctance to just continue to pour money into a university that's not being run properly. And I think that's where we wanted them to have the opportunity to take corrective action, so that when we start to put more and more money into TSU, we know it's going to be spent appropriately. And hopefully with this new board comes in, that will give the General Assembly the confidence that things are headed in the right direction. And then if there is any shortcomings, we can start to make those up.
It's crazy, because when you read this story talking about TSU, they had a 250% increase in scholarships. And when you're saying that you're underfunded by $2.1 billion, but then you increase all of these scholarships in the last 4 years, that's not sustainable, and it also caused a housing crisis. So I guess part of my question would be, who approved all of those additional scholarships? Because it does seem like bad planning. Is that part of what the board of directors did?
That is correct, Dan. They opened this up to where they told anybody that if you come to TSU, you'll have a scholarship and you'll have a dorm room to live in. Well, when you start telling kids that want to go to college, especially at a historic black university, that they have an opportunity to go there under scholarship and have a place to live, knowing that people are going to show up and you don't have places for them to live or have the ability to cover all that additional cost. Now we've got kids living in hotels all across Nashville, and guess what? That gets extremely expensive, and that's where a lot of the board oversight was not there. That was a bad plan to begin with, and the board never stepped in to stop it.
State Rep Scott Cepicky is joining us, talking about the State General Assembly bouncing the entire board of Tennessee State University. They have now been replaced. Democrats say the optics, and I'm just reporting the news here, Scott, so you can give me your opinion on it. We touched on this a moment ago. By the way, very quickly, I don't know if we actually settled this question. Has there been any indication that there was corruption involved, or is it just incompetence?
I wouldn't use the word corruption. I would use more of lack of oversight by the board.
Okay.
And so it led to a lot of problems with the administration. I don't think the comptroller's report came back with the word corruption, just a lot of lack of oversight.
Democrats say the optics of a bunch of white legislators ousting the entire board of an HBCU looks horrendous. Of course, bringing race into it, which is what they always do. But it seems to me that is negated by the fact, and you and I spoke about this earlier, the entire replacement board are graduates of TSU. And so this is I looked at this board. I mean, this is a pretty pretty interesting board. It seems to me anyway, they're qualified. You've got bank presidents, CEOs of corporations, senior vice president at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. These folks seem to have some serious experience. What is the difference between, and this may be an unfair question, but what is the difference between this board and the board that just got bounced?
Well, the board that just got bounced, we have a track record of lack of oversight. This new board coming in is ones that are going to give, hopefully, TSU a fresh start moving forward to put TSU on the map of where we need it to be. I want to applaud Governor Lee, and this is a word that we use a lot that sometimes is negative connotation, but in this one, I think it's very positive. The diversity of the appointees that they have come all from different walks of life, different professions, and they bring different expertise to that board now that I think TSU could become a flagship, historically black university in the country to do what it's supposed to do, attract more people of all different races to come to that college and get a great education. So I applaud Governor Lee for his quick response, because let's face it, Matt, I'm sorry.
Dan?
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Dan,
I forgot Jay Harper's name earlier. It's karma.
Well, this is, Governor Lee knows that, kids are starting to choose their college starting in May. So we have to have this board in place, functioning, taking corrective action as quick as we can to give kids the confidence to go to TSU to get their education. And I think it's going to work.
So I've got to then ask the question, where did the previous board come from? Like, how long have they been there?
Well, they've been appointed over various terms. There were 3 members whose terms were getting ready to expire in June, and that was the deal that was cut in government operations, to just basically say you're not going to leave in June. For those 3, you're going to leave now, and that was just unacceptable. But these people have come from all over the state of Tennessee, just like the new board, and they've had their opportunity to govern TSU, and they've done it in a way that the comptroller and the General Assembly has not felt has been in the best interest of TSU. And so we've exercised our right to replace them, and we have, and the governor's going to reappoint a board, and then we will watch and provide oversight of that board.
Now, Glenda Glover, who is, I guess, the outgoing TSU president, apparently she's going to be leaving by the end of the year, or at the end of the year. Is she part of the, number one, is she part of the problem? And number 2, why 9 months? Why does it take 9 months? If she's not doing the job, then why does it take that long to replace her and get her out of office?
Well, I would think that would depend on what the new board has to say, Dan. I mean, she works for that new board of trustees. Okay, yeah. And so if that new board of trustees feels like that they need to go in a new direction immediately, that would be up to them.
Got it. Because the old board was standing by Glover, and so now the new board has to come in and they're going to say, okay, well, we don't think you're doing the gig, so you're out, and the search for the replacement speeds up.
That is their call.
Okay. Scott Cepicky, thank you very much for joining us here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Did I miss anything on this interview that needs to be said?
No, Dan, you did a great job on this Good Friday morning.
Well, thank you, Scott. It checks in the mail.